Hi there, I'm Natasha. This is my channel, Always Be Crafting. Today is Monday, and on Monday I like to do something called Making Monday. So what am I making? I'm making a cake. Today is Monday, April 21st, and it is my mom's birthday. Now, if you are new here, welcome. This is my kitchen. If you've been here before, maybe you've never been in my kitchen with me before. I've only had videos like 3 or 4 times up here in my kitchen, so you may not have seen that before. So it could be new. I apologize for not having a more secure camera set up. I'm gonna do my best. Hopefully the camera does not drive us all crazy. So, as I was saying, it's my mom's birthday, and I'm going to bake her favorite cake, which is the Bolo de Chocolate. It is also known as Brazilian chocolate cake. My mom, what can I tell you about my mom? So she passed away 16 years ago. It'll be 16 years on May 3rd. So she died 12 days after her 69th birthday. And her birthday wish on her birthday was to have one more year. She wanted to make it to 70. That birthday wish did not come true because she had cancer and it was very bad. Very, very, very bad. And on her birthday, on her 69th birthday, she actually had a stroke that put her in the hospital where they found lesions in her brain. And that's when they found out that the cancer had spread to her brain. And that's when we knew that it was going to be very fast by that time. We didn't know it was going to be that fast. We thought we might have a couple of months. We didn't know we were only going to have less than 2 weeks. I live in Connecticut. My mom was still at my childhood home in California, and I flew the whole family out. You know, when it happened, we flew the whole family across the country, and I was apartment hunting because I thought, okay, well, that's it. I'm going to live here for 6 months or something, probably. My baby was not yet 1. My younger son is going to turn 17 in June, so he was not yet 1. He was 11 months. Sorry about this camera, trying to keep the angle up. And my older son is 3 years older than my younger son, so he was not yet 4. And so I just thought, okay, I'm just gonna pull out of preschool. We're just going to quit my job. I'm just like, that's it. I'm just gonna leave. I'm just gonna move in and find an apartment. And my husband's like, what? I'm like, if you can leave, you're coming with us. Otherwise, I'm taking the kids and I'm going. Like, that was it. And my husband was shocked, but he understood, and he was gonna do whatever he could do to help me. And obviously he came on that initial trip to help me house hunt, and he was gonna do whatever he had to do to make this happen because he could see that I was very determined that was what was gonna happen. And like I said, we never ended up renting a place because it was very fast in the end. But that's not what we're talking about today. We're not talking about the end of her life. We're talking about her life because it was amazing. She was amazing. Can I show you a picture? So this is my mom's cookbook. Well, it's my cookbook, but she wrote it for me. So this is a picture of us. That's me and my mom. I think you can tell who's who based on the picture. I'm so much younger. This photo was taken, try to get it good, a little glary right there. This photo was taken right before my wedding. This is actually on the grounds of the winery where my husband and I got married. And we were doing something, I think we were meeting with the florist. I don't remember what we were doing. And the person we were meeting that day, whether it was the florist or whoever, said, oh, can I take a picture of you and your mom? You look so good. And I'm so glad that they took a picture of us because I love this photo. And then my mom put the picture in this book, and she hand wrote every page. So every page, this is, that's funny that I turned to this one that's typed. This was my 9th grade. I had like one of those assignments where you had to give a presentation in class. You had to just teach something, and I taught how to make bilashi, which is like one of my favorite Russian dishes. So I had typed up instructions, so my mom had included that, plus her handwriting. But every page, you know, she decorated all the pages with all her recipes. And yeah, so it is one of my favorite books. I use it all the time. This camera. Something fell out of the book. What fell out? I don't know. I'll figure it out later. Something fell out. Anyways, Bolo de Chocolate, Brazilian chocolate cake. It's very mildly chocolate flavored because in this case, it is sweetened with hot chocolate mix in Brazil, where she lived. So she was born in Russia, but in 1940. So it was a war, and she was kind of a miracle baby that she survived. Her older sister died in infancy, so she never met her older sister. And she was also named Natasha, like me. I was named for her. But Natasha, I am actually Natasha. She was Natalia. So she was, proper Russian name. Natasha is not a proper Russian name. If you do not know, Natasha is a nickname. It is not a proper Russian name. Natalia is the proper Russian name. That was my mom's name. And Natalia is like Natalie. So if you know anyone named Natalie, it's the same name basically. So it means to be born. So it's like a celebration, like natare, I guess, is the Latin, I think. So it is a celebratory name, to be born. And so of course it was very celebration for her to be born, especially after her older sister had died. And she had 2 older brothers as well. But again, this is a war, and she was kind of a miracle, and she survived. And the family got separated. It was a very traumatic childhood growing up in, war-torn countries. Her family got moved around a lot. Her family got split up and reconnected, which was amazing. She grew up in war camps and displaced persons camps. And she has memories of like bomb shelters, and just her memories were there was a lot of horrible, horrible things in her childhood. And she would never travel by boat because when the war was over, somehow they were in Germany at the end of the war. But of course, this was World War II, of course. At the end of World War II, Germany was, they had lost the war, and they were like, all foreigners out. Like, we need to rebuild, all foreigners out. That's the way she said it, not the way I'm not a historian. I'm just telling you how my mom told me the story. So they couldn't go back to Russia because my grandparents were very anti-communist. So they were persona non grata in Russia. They could not go back to Russia, and they had no home. So they tried to get into the United States, but they didn't have anyone to sponsor them. They ended up getting into Brazil. Ding, 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 Brazil. And so it was a very long boat ride to get to Brazil. And so she never wanted to go on another boat after that, really. Like, it was a lot for her to ever go like on a ferry or anything else. Like, she was not a boat person. And so she tried not to tell too many stories because it was just too traumatic. So everything I know about her is I know how resilient she was. That's what I can tell you. She followed. I'm also recording at the same time. I'm making a quilt out of a lot of her quilt blocks. And so I'm also currently in the process of filming footage for that. So I feel like I'm telling a lot of her stories. So even though you're not going to be watching that video at the same time as you're watching this video, my brain is like, no, you told that story already. But my mom was very much a rule follower because she always had to be. She was always having to adapt to these new situations and, learning lots of languages. And her parents were very well educated. And so they made sure that the children were very well educated. So she made sure we were very well educated. She was very by the book because she had to be. It was like a survival skill, you know? And even though there was a lot of sparkle to her too, you know, it was what do I want to say? She was sassy, but you wouldn't know it by, like, if you met her, you would just think she was a straight arrow. You know, you would think this woman follows the rules. She is prim and proper and she doesn't break any laws, right? Like, she listens to opera, she plays the piano, she is by the book. But then you got to know her and you're like, oh, she also does belly dancing and she loves disco, you know? But it's like, it was like so deceptive. Like, you can't judge a book by its cover. Like, that was my mom. Like, she didn't wear makeup. She wore her hair short. She was no nonsense. You would think she was just like a librarian, like very quiet, mild mannered. And then you got to know her and she loved color and she loved sequins and she just loved everything in big, puffy, you know, just plumes of color, which makes sense that I am the way I am. So this chocolate cake is kind of like that. It's very non-aggressive. It seems like almost nothing. You look at it and you're like, it's a very simple recipe. It doesn't seem like it's going to impress you very much. You're like, oh, okay, whatever. But then you have it, and even though it's not overwhelming, it's still very mild. It just like makes you happy, you know? You eat it and you just think, oh, there's more to it than you expect there to be. I guess that's what I'm going to say. It's a very, very satisfying, not overly chocolatey, not overly sweet, just the right amount of cake. Okay, that's it. All right, that's my story. I talked way too much. Okay, I think I got the camera where it's going to stay standing up again. Fingers crossed. Oh, I'm looking the wrong way. I had to kind of like flip you around. So now you're over there when you used to be over there. Okay, let's bake a cake. So I've got a mixing bowl. I've got all my ingredients. I'm making sure you're not falling. My eggs and my butter I pulled out of the fridge this morning. I didn't have whole milk, so I only had like skim milk. So I went to the grocery store. So my milk, because you have to use whole milk. So my whole milk is a little cold because I just picked it up at the grocery store like half an hour ago, but it's been on my counter since then, so hopefully it won't be that big of a deal. Otherwise, you want those items at room temperature, if at all possible. It just makes for, I actually don't know what the science is. I probably learned it at one point and now I've forgotten. But anyways, you want your room temperature ingredients. Let's see, what else do I need to pull out? So you need 2 cups of flour. I'm gonna try to remember to write the recipe in the comments, not in the comments, in the description box. 2 cups of flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, a half teaspoon of salt, 3 eggs, room temperature, 1 stick of softened butter, again, room temperature butter, 2 cups of sugar, 2/3 cup of milk, and again, that is whole milk, and 1 envelope of hot cocoa powder, any kind you like. We use Swiss Miss, and I actually do use 2 envelopes of Swiss Miss. I think it's just, I like extra chocolate in mine. I've always used 2 envelopes, but she wrote it for 1 envelope. So now I have to decide if I'm gonna follow her recipe today and use just 1 envelope, or if I'm going to break the rules and use 2 envelopes. All right, I should probably honor my mom and just use 1 envelope. I pulled 2 envelopes. I'm gonna use 1 envelope. I'm gonna follow her, honor her, 1 envelope. Now, you usually bake all of this in a Bundt pan at 350 degrees for 45 minutes. I'm not baking it in a Bundt pan today. I'm breaking all the rules today. So I have this sunflower pan, and it's fairly shallow. So I think it's gonna work out okay. I'm not sure. It might be a total disaster. But what I have to do is I have to butter and flour the pan so it doesn't stick. So because it has all these nooks and crannies, and I know these pans are supposed to be nonstick, but we all know they're never nonstick. I'm gonna actually spray this with cooking spray. I use Pam. I don't know if anyone has like any recommendations for other cooking sprays, but that's the one I use. So I use the Pam cooking spray, and then I'll put flour on it. Sound good? So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm going to spray this, and I'm gonna get the rest of my ingredients out of the pantry. So I'm gonna hit pause because I have to spray it over my sink, and I don't wanna move the camera because we already know how much work it's been just trying to get the camera to set up. I don't even know if I'm looking at the camera in the right spot because now my phone's all upside down. All right, I'm gonna hit pause and I'll be right back. Okay, I also put on my apron because it's messy. So I have sprayed and floured my pan, as you can see. And I think I got pretty decent coverage of it. It's so messy. Now, I don't know about anyone else, but I think that, I mean, obviously I read you what my mom's instructions, right? All her instructions say is heat oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, mix the following. I already read you all the ingredients. Then dissolve the chocolate in the milk. Mix all the above ingredients, butter and flour a Bundt cake form. Put the mixed dough in it. Bake for about 45 minutes. Really good. That's the whole recipe. So there's a lot of assumed knowledge. And she can assume because she taught me how to cook. So she assumes I remember how to, tap the side of the pan to move the butter and flour around the pan. She assumes I remember that I need to now mix the eggs and the butter and the sugar to cream that together before I add in the flour and the baking powder and the salt. Like she assumes I know all that. The only thing she did not assume that I knew to put the chocolate into the milk. So she wrote that down because she's like, yeah, Tashi's gonna forget that. So she wrote that down. And she's right. I would have forgotten that. I probably would have put the milk in with the eggs and the butter because my brain would have been like, oh, I need to cream that. And she knew, nope, she's going to make that mistake. I better tell her to make sure she dissolves the chocolate into that. Otherwise, she's going to put the chocolate with the flour and the milk with the eggs, and she's going to put them in the wrong order. Right? And that just reminds me of so many things we do. So many cookbooks or even sewing patterns assume so much knowledge, right? And that's okay because a lot of us actually have the knowledge because we have had really good teachers in our lives. But if you haven't had a teacher, don't be afraid to go out there and find the information somewhere else. Find a different cookbook, find a different YouTube video, find a different dress pattern. Don't be afraid to go out and find a different place to get that information. Just because one place assumes you have knowledge doesn't mean you should feel bad for not actually having the knowledge. I was telling my son the other day that there were times where I would do the wrong thing and I would tell people I knew what I was doing because I didn't like it when people assumed I was dumb. Like that's what I felt like, And I remember I've made so many mistakes and I learned from my mistakes, but gosh, wouldn't it have been nice to not have to make those mistakes so that if I had just been open to learning? I feel like it took me a really long time to get over that stubbornness. Maybe I am still stubborn. I hope I'm not. I hope I'm open-minded now. I hope I'm open to learning. I'm trying to be open to learning. All right, we got to get this mixed because I got to go pick up a kid from school. All right, so what did I say next? I got to cream the soft stuff, right? So we're going to do 3 eggs, the butter, and the sugar, because that's what we cream, right? So it's 3 eggs. So we're going to crack those. I crack my eggs on the counter. It's not a good idea. If you're cracking them on the side of the bowl, you just run the risk of actually getting eggshell in your mix. A lot of people will crack one at a time into a separate container and then move the egg. I live dangerously. I just crack right into my big mixing bowl. You do you. You do what you got to do. But I do crack on the countertop, not on the side of the bowl, because I don't like having to fish out eggshells. I used to crack on the side of the bowl because it just was so satisfying. It felt like it went faster. But not worth it in the end. Not worth it in the end. Okay, that was my stick of butter. And I said sugar. It is 2 cups of sugar. So I got my cup, my 1 cup measuring, and make sure if you are new to baking, baking is chemistry. So follow the measurements and use your, these kinds of cups are for dry ingredients, okay? There's a different kind of measuring cup for wet ingredients. This is not wet ingredients, this is dry ingredients. Okay, that was 2 cups of sugar. I have a hand mixer. I think I'm gonna hit pause just so I don't have to do the editing. I put that one in the wrong one. Just so I don't have to do the editing for sound. Is that okay? You don't mind, right? You don't wanna watch me mix. Okay, be right back. Okay, I've mixed. Nice yellow. That is butter, 3 eggs, 1 stick butter, 3 eggs, and 2 cups of sugar. Now I'm going to do baking powder. It is how much? 2 teaspoons of baking powder. So, teaspoons. Again, dry ingredients, dry spoons. 1, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, and I need salt. This is another one of those assumed knowledge moments. When dealing with baking, whenever a recipe in baking calls for salt, when it just says salt, it doesn't say anything else in front of it, it means iodized salt, okay? Iodized. It is the smallest granules, okay? If it wants kosher salt, it'll call for kosher salt. If it wants any special kind of salt, it'll tell you what kind of special salt it wants. If it just says salt, it means iodized. I don't think I've ever seen anyone write iodized salt in a recipe, okay? So ½ teaspoon of salt. All right. I'm gonna pause you to, actually I probably don't need to pause you. This is gonna be fast, ready? See, that was fast. All right, so now I'm gonna do my milk. I always like to do the flour last. You don't want your flour to get like overly beaten. We're not baking bread, so we don't wanna beat the flour to death. So I do the flour last. So it is 2/3 cup of milk, and I can see my 2/3 on my wet measuring cup right here. I didn't grab a stirring spoon for that. Hold on, let me measure. Okay. Full milk, and I'm gonna pour in my Swiss Miss. And it's, again, not sugar-free or anything like that. I don't mess with that stuff. I like the whole stuff. And like I said, I usually do 2 packets, but I'm honoring my mom. I'm grabbing a stir stick. I just use a little chopstick. So I stir that around. I feel like it doesn't dissolve as fast in cold milk as it would in like warm milk. And I haven't made this cake in a while, so I can't remember if I usually stick it in the microwave to warm up. That might be something I've done. I feel like if it is something I've done in the past, I really need to write that into the book. But I haven't written it in. I guess we'll find out together. But it's doing okay. It's dissolving okay. You could probably do other things like Nestle Quick or something like that. I don't know. It's not something I keep in my house. It's just not what I grew up on. I grew up on Swiss Miss. I don't know how Swiss Miss became the favorite hot cocoa. I think sometimes something becomes on sale, or a parent likes a brand specifically, or it's always the one that your grocery store sells when you're a kid. So it becomes the one you always gravitate to. And for me, that was Swiss Miss. All right, I'm pouring that in. Get as much of that chocolatey goodness in there as I can. A couple of little granules are sticking to the side. I'm not really surprised, but it's fine. All right, it does not look good right now. It's not appetizing looking right now, but it's time for the flour. So it is, again, 2 cups of flour. Sorry, I keep forgetting where to look for the camera, like where the lens is. So if my eyes look like I'm not making eye contact, I apologize. Here we go, 2 cups flour. I use these big bins for my flour and sugar because I like to use the wall of the bin to flatten out so I don't have to use like another knife or something to flatten out my scoop. That's my personal hack. If you have a round bin and you can't use that, or if you're just pulling your flour from a bag, then you're gonna wanna use like a knife or something because you want that to be even. Again, baking is chemistry, so measurements matter. Okay? Measurements matter. All right, that is 2 cups. Obviously, if you spill a little bit here and there, it's not the end of the world, but you want to get close. I am going to hit pause again because it's going to be noisy, so you just don't need it. All right, you want to see it? Okay, I'm going to bring you down so you can see, ooh, pardon me, the cake batter. Okay, so as you can see, there are little like tiny little clumps of butter in there from when we creamed the butter. Those are going to just be little pockets of yumminess in the final cake. I'm going to pour it into the pan. It's going to go again into a 350 degree oven for 45 minutes. So I have to go pick up a kid from school. Hopefully my husband will remember to pull out the cake when the timer goes off. And then I will check in with you when I come back, hopefully to a done cake. See you soon. Bye. The cake is done, and I am thrilled to announce, I'm never going to get these camera angles right today. I am thrilled to announce that it came out of the cake pan pretty cleanly. So I guess I did a pretty decent job of getting that floured and sprayed. So now the last thing to do is to powder the cake with powdered sugar, because it's not the kind of cake that you put frosting onto. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get a colander and some powdered sugar and then sprinkle that on the cake, and I will set you up so you can, I guess, watch me do that, and then I'll cut the cake and try a piece. Sound good? All right, let me hit pause. All right, so here is the cake. Told you it's a very light chocolate cake, so it's not super dark. Here's my little colander or sifter, whatever you want to call it. Strainer is another word, I guess. And I'll take a spoon, big old soup spoon, powdered sugar. Put that in there. And then there you go. I put on my apron again, obviously because powdered sugar is messy. And I cut myself a little petal of the cake. And happy birthday to my mama. Shall we taste it? See if it's everything I remembered? Should we look at the structure? Structure of the cake. Nice and cakey looking. Let's try. Yep. Exactly what I remember. It's spongy. It's sweet. Of course, I did just take a bite with the powdered sugar, so that helps, the sweetness. But it's not too sweet. Hold on, one more bite. Yep. Told you this camera, does not want to play nice. It's sweet without being like too sweet, in my opinion. Maybe someone would think it was too sweet. Yeah, I guess if you really like bitter chocolate, it's not bitter. There's nothing bitter about it. I love it. I think my mom would be really happy to have this cake today. So I'm gonna think about my mom and enjoy the cake and share it with my family. My husband's making a lot of noise in the background. Looking at you, sir. And I hope you are celebrating the people you love. He's making more noise. What the hey? I hope you are celebrating the people you love, whatever side of the earth they are on, and making the most out of your Monday as well. Thanks for watching. Bye.